as she said, I'm Doris Murigi. I run SR. We are sitting in the technical committee because we are developing the local content policy and regulations with Tony Paul. And all you're saying, we're feeding into the policy. It's hard to, as I said yesterday, we went through a masterclass with Tony Paul on local content, and just I'll attempt to summarize what we went through. And being marked as a teacher is in class, Tony. I think the basis yesterday started with Mwendia's presentation, and it was, I think Mwendia laid down what are the challenges that we're experiencing as a country. And the challenges are information asymmetry, and there were various, that information asymmetry is not just between the suppliers, even within the companies, then the different laws, the lack of a regulator, the underdevelopment of supply chain and infrastructure, and lack of specialized skills. So Tony took us through definition of local content, and Ken, you've mentioned it. It was one of the slides that Tony spent some time on, how different countries define local content. But in our case, what is important is what are we measuring and how are we measuring it. Then the local content is two-phased, skills development and enterprise development, and the PS has gone through it wonderfully. And the key issue was how the case for local content. I don't think anybody needs to be told the reasons for local content, but I think the summary is that it makes business sense. So local content is an outcome of some national development goals, and Tony took us through the stages in local content implementation, which are employment and procurement, human and business capacity development, policy, have a policy that guides the stakeholders, a strategy after policy, market analysis. Importantly, local content is not a single event, it's interconnected events, and therefore it's important to understand what are we building, how are we building it, what things are staged together and work together. In developing local content, it's important for the country to understand what we want as a country, what is available. This means, therefore, we must understand the demand and supply of it. And there is, Cardinal is here, they're working on the demand and supply analysis that the government is doing to get up project. Then Tony took us through the 4 pillars of local content implementation. Number 1 was training and skills development. This has to be strategic, he emphasized. Number 2 was the business and supply development. Then enhancement of procurement of goods and services. Then measurement through monitoring, governance, and assurance. You remember Tony said most of the governments focused on the first 3, then when we don't measure, then it doesn't get done. Then Tony will take us through the two scenarios I'm sure that he went through. But the key questions that we need to address is, we need to understand what is our resource base and the assets available and the opportunities our resource base can create. What are the legal and contractual terms? That is, we need to understand the legal environment. What are the attributes involved in the sector and how long does it need to be understood? We need to understand the current state of the country, what resources we have, so that we start with what we have and then build up. We need to understand where to start and focus on the national priorities before we can go to regional priorities. We need also to understand the gaps we have and address those gaps. And then it took us through how we can deliver benefits to the local community. And key in all this really is in information. But the 4 key things that we must be addressed are capability, competency, capacity, and local value addition. On skills development, Tony said that skills development needs to be strategic. And this is where I almost gave up, because he took us through how Trinidad built. There was a strategic, there was a vision from their founding president, there was the national strategic plan, then which fed into the local content policy and implementation plan. We may have gotten it all mixed up, but I think it's not late. We will try and link the vision, the strategy to the vision and the local content policy. And I think for me, the key thing, the key takeaways from yesterday is that the importance of retaining value in the country. Tony likes to say that in country, is what we should be focusing on. And Kenya must be analytical, strategic, and importantly monitor the local content requirements. And then because it's a moving thing, we must keep reviewing this. There isn't a fixed time for it. And the bottom line, as my takeaway was that it's complex. It's not going to be easy. It involves so many moving parts, so many players, and crosses so many regulations. And we always think about the cost of doing, as Tony said, but we must also think about the cost of not doing. And in summary, therefore, local content is not a means to an end, is a means to an end, not an end in itself. Thank you.
Brilliant summation. Thank you so much, Doris, on behalf of the Technical Committee, Validation Committee. Now, another 5 to 10 minutes for Anthony Paul. This is mostly for the benefit who have not yet had the chance to hear Anthony Paul. You need to hear Anthony Paul. Seeing is believing. So as also he came all the way from Trinidad and Tobago, surely, please let us give him a wonderful Kenyan welcome.
And good morning, all. I have a few minutes, but I don't know what I have to say again. Doris said it all. And then I can actually recap anything that hasn't been recapped already. What I will quickly do is put up 1 or 2 slides that I think people commented on yesterday as giving an impression of what might have worked. So I'll just quickly go through 1 or 2 of these. So for the benefit of those who weren't here, to say exactly as Doris has said, you need to be strategic in how you go about doing local content. And that requires understanding what is required, understanding what you have, and then building a strategy to close the gap. More importantly, doing that in a way that targets getting an ultimate outcome. And as Doris said, it's not an end-to-end term. Let me just right, so what I want to also say is that value addition, we speak about it, and Ken did a very good job. Ken was an excellent presentation around how we can add value from the resource and during the activities involved in extracting the resource. And there are 2 kinds of value additions I described yesterday. One was what we typically know, beneficiation, wherein we take the natural resource that's being produced and convert it into other products and use those products or the raw material itself and take it to market. I don't need a slide, but actually, you think you might need a slide more than I would. But the thing is that the second bit of benefit of value addition is, as we saw from Ken, actually participating in the activities of oil and gas, whether it's exploration, production, development. But importantly, building the infrastructure support systems, the capacity, the services that the oil and gas sector uses. And we heard PSA, the sector actually demands a high standard. And taking those same goods, services, infrastructure to other sectors of the economy and improving their capability and making them more competitive. We also saw that we need to start with what we have, build on those, use local goods, services, enhance them, make them competitive, and you can expand them to bring in more services. And because the industry in the country is already competitive, globally competitive, or the companies anyway demand a high standard, then you can take your services overseas. So we look at that. And I think the piece that to me, put it together is that local content is an outcome of some inputs. And the inputs we have are capacity building, for instance. The capacity building of what is determined by what it is that we're trying to achieve out of the activities of oil and gas. And those come back from what is the demand for goods and services, what is the supply we have in the country today, and what do we need to build. And that capacity building then becomes an input into the local content, which only happens when locals get employed or are given contracts to provide goods and services. But the key message I want to leave is that even though we might do a good job at training people, making sure the companies procure the services, we have to ensure that these are aligned with a national vision and a national aspiration, and that the things we put in place to achieve those are in fact delivering the results we want, and that they are appropriate. And I walked us through the example of Trinidad and Tobago, where having had an old oil industry, started by exploration in the 1850s, drilling in the 1850s, production commercially in 1908, refining in 1912. We had a big oil industry in the 1970s when the oil price increased. But of independence, in the 1960s, we took a decision that we would get more value from oil and gas. And we would do that by, and this was in 1960s, like 1 year after independence, we would use natural gas to create more industrialization. We have more downstream value addition. We had a refinery, we had natural gas being flared. We stopped flaring natural gas in the 1960s, well, onshore anyway, converted it into power and fertilizer, because oil was an agrarian level industry, economy. So in 1959, we had agriculture. And then, into independence, we kept that going. We said, let's train people to get more jobs, let's get more locals investing in the sector by giving them opportunities, let's get more value addition. In the 1970s, when the oil boom came after the Arab oil embargo, we had excess windfall from oil production and oil revenues. And we used that as a country to capture flare gas from the offshore, build a natural gas industry, including a natural transmission company, power plant, ammonia, methanol, infrastructure around that. That created industrialization, the need for highly trained people. It supported education and institutional development. We had built over time programs for education for kids near to plants and oil fields that designed programs to meet their capabilities, that were trained by practitioners, and that included a high level of on-the-job training. So we created people who were practitioners, trained specifically for the jobs. In the 70s, we expanded those training institutions into the cities, and we used the same model of education, where the program was designed by practitioners, taught to a large extent by practitioners, and including a high level of on-the-job practice. That helped us understand the industry, participate to a high level, because in the 1970s, we couldn't get foreign investors in oil and gas, so locals had to do it. So we understood not only how to operate the plants and the equipment, but to manage the business, which had been for a long time a key missing. Is the key factor in which we always needed foreign participants, in that they understood, they brought the capacity to analyze an asset, to build a business case for it after understanding the market, to go raise capital, access technology, contract with suppliers, manage them, and then build, oversee construction. But we actually got those head office skills to stay with us. And those are the skills that allow us to move into other industrial sectors like manufacturing, food processing, and also helped us build the capital market. In the 1990s, we had a lot of big natural gas discoveries. And we were about to build that out into a bigger set of plants and factories. By that time, we had 20 plus world-scale methanol, ammonia, iron, steel plants, and we were not going into LNG. And when we started to go there, we saw that there's something that we had learned from moving the excess value from oil into gas. And we did that because we knew oil would run out, and we knew gas would run out. And then we decided we had to do something with the excess revenue from all this gas. And what was that? And we actually said, let's move that into building the next sphere of national development. And that was developing people, technology, and innovation. How did we do that? Develop a vision for the sector, saying how can this sector support national development, and how the sector go about doing that. And then that fed into a national development vision for the country. Out of that came a local content policy. That local content policy then fed into a national development strategy and implementation plan. So we were connected at the very outset, which happened before in the 1960s, 70s, and 2000. And that's been the traditional review. We've always said oil and gas development will support national development. And the local content policy then said, what are the strategy objectives? What are the things that the country wants to get value from, to create the future we're looking at? And that future was all about an innovation-driven economy. So we said, let's look at this sector. Some of them actually have characteristics around innovation and technology. Let's focus local content on those. Some of them have the ability to create high-level jobs, strategic jobs that people kept at head office. Let's focus on doing that. And we looked at the different characteristics, and there's where we targeted local content activities in Trinidad, capacity building, partnerships, things to be done in country. And the ultimate outcome is that in the 1950s, 60s, before independence, inter-independence, we were a factor-driven economy, meaning our competitiveness was based on how much we produced and how cheap we produced it. And the strategies back then was to improve capacity, get people better equipped, get more production out of the ground, get more out of our refineries. In the 1970s and 80s, we moved to an investment-based economy, and we got more value from the plants we built to add value to the natural gas. In the 2000s, the strategy was to become an innovation-driven economy. And that's what that local content policy targeted, going after the high technology and innovation capacity of the oil and gas sector, and using that to build local companies and local people, and to build the institutions that help train them to do research and innovation. In 2013, the World Economic Forum declared Trinidad and Tobago an innovation-driven economy. So the idea was that we use oil and natural gas to build what we want as a country, and find strategies to make sure that local content and the way companies behaved supported that. What we put in place initially was a very strong regulator with industry experienced people and laws that were quite general but very targeted in terms of saying you will build capacity, you will use locals. It didn't give numbers. But the technical people at the ministry at the time had the ability to negotiate the right outcomes for each contract, each development plan, each operation. Over time, we moved from industry people to new hires, and we didn't build that same ability to integrate the demand and the supply into what we wanted. So we lost some traction. What we discovered is that it's all well and good to put good policies in place, have a nice vision, a good institution, good systems. But if you don't have a way to review and improve it and keep it current, you will lose traction. So we have made some mistakes along the way, and hopefully we can help Kenny and others learn from those. But certainly there's a lot that you have to your advantage. And the PS spoke about that. The industries you have in place, the people you have, the other assets you have, the businesses that you have. I think Kenya stands to do a lot better than we have done. Even with the smaller resources you have now, and I agree with PS, you've really scratched the surface. And I think that you can be giving me starting from an example, certainly for Africa and for the rest of the world. And I thank you for giving me the chance to be a part of this, and I wish you well in this endeavor. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world-renowned expert in local content, Anthony Paul. I lived in Trinidad for about 2 years, Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you, as an African, when you go to the hospitals, it is free. When you go to schools, it is free. We're very happy, I can tell you. And all that was oil money, because somebody in the 60s thought, I don't need to eat it all now, but we can start putting steps and processes. It's so good that the hospital that was closest to us has got panoramic views of the sea. And some people will check in on the hospital on a Friday evening. They have 3 meals. True story. you have, you know, you're taken care of so well. They've got trained personnel. I mean, it's a really fantastic system. And now some people even now take it further.